You
Yeah.
have to have your leadership understand, one, they're elected. In order to remain elected, they need to invest in the program because it protects the citizens' data and the reputation of your county. If those two things aren't done, re-election's probably a hard thing to do for them, and they need to understand that. And our mission as CISOs is not to stop business. It's not that at all. We service these citizens. We want to make sure their data that they're entrusting us with is protected, and making sure that the leaders understand that as well.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Wiz is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the best-selling CISO Compass: Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and security thought leaders. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Richard Greenberg, CEO, Security Advisors, LLC, and Layer 8 Masters, and Michael Dent, CISO at Fairfax County Government, Virginia. Both of these gentlemen have led large county government security programs.
I have an interesting story for you. So sit down and get comfortable. I was an IT director, and I was charged with building a vibrant infrastructure to allow hundreds of business partners to connect to an application where we were building. And we didn't have anything at that time that was really robust. And in the county, they did offer some VPN, but it had certain limitations that wouldn't work for us. So I started building out our whole new infrastructure for VPN. And I start getting, I wouldn't say threatening, but uncomfortable emails from the CIO of the entire county saying you're creating problems, backdoors, et cetera, into the county. And on the other hand, my business executive leadership was really pushing hard. And so I said, I probably should get myself a little bit of security training to make sure, because as an IT director, we work with security, clearly. At that time, there was no such thing as a CISO. So we were it, basically. So I went and got some formalized training and ultimately got my CISSP. And interestingly enough, when I started responding to some of these uncomfortable emails and signed them Richard Greenberg, CISSP, suddenly, and this was not my intention, but suddenly the tone of the responses totally changed. It was remarkable. Initially I didn't really notice it, but then after a few, I said, wow, now they realize that, hey, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about after all. So that was a very interesting, and it wasn't mine. I just took the class to get a little more knowledge, to brush up. Hey, am I doing this the right way? And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
That's great. I mean, that is a great standard that's been around for a long time. Anybody in this industry really needs to get that CISSP. So that's a great story. Michael, what attracted you to the cybersecurity field?
Well, I guess it began when I was in the military. My first 3 years I was in the infantry, but I was stationed here in Washington, D.C. at the 3rd Infantry, the Honor Guard. So I was in the Presidential Escort Company. So, of course, security from the physical standpoint was always something that was, first in mind for me. But I also realized I did not want to be an infantryman for the rest of my career in the military. So went to the recruiter and said, hey, my time's coming up. I want to do something with these things coming out called computers. And this was back in the 80s. And they said, well, we've got this perfect job. You can be a fixed station communications expert, and you'll be able to do these messages and things like that. And it was it was interesting because when he said fixed station, I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, it means you won't go out to the field like the infantry guys. And I said, that's the job I want. Looking for a job, I went into corrections. I started there. It's funny. I started there on their help desk and worked myself up to being an engineer. And we implemented the first fiber ring in the state of Virginia through all the prison systems. So, doing that, I noticed, we were providing all these new things, new technology, but we didn't have antivirus. We were having, issues, bandwidth issues and all of that stuff. So I figured out some things, and they ended up designating me as the CISO for the agency. And that's basically how I started.
It's amazing to me. And I hear this over and over again, how many people kind of fell into cybersecurity, and this was an accidental thing. And now we have this great career path, which is very exciting for people. Well, let's switch gears today and talk about county governments. I mean, you two have both been CISOs in county government. Richard for the county, LA County, for the health services area, and Michael with Fairfax County. And I think, county governments, how are they different? How would you say, what are those different challenges that you have in a county government that you may not have in a corporation?
Well, in government, it's not revenue based, and also there's a different mindset. You've got to be incredibly patient. You've got to just, fight, wait. That's basically the way it works. There's so much red tape, so much bureaucracy. And if you're in a private company, there's a race to get that stuff going because you've got competitors. And so if you need to get something rolled out or built or protected, everyone's on board. There's still issues with getting your budget approved. My peers cry to me in their drinks over that. However, in government, people say, okay, we'll get to it. You don't have that competition that's driving it. There's dollars aren't driving it. So you've got to overcome the natural tendency to start screaming and yelling all the time. Stay calm, stay focused. You've got to enlist, and this goes for, private and public. You've got to enlist friends in high places. That's really how all of this works once you get to this level, if you want to be successful. And you've got to write great justifications, but there's also a language in government that's different than the private sector. You've got to use certain phrases and words and know who to send memos to and emails and document everything. So,
but what would be some of those phrases or words that would be beneficial to your security program?
Well, it's a cultural thing, right? Each place is different. So, normally you would say, well, I just need to write this justification that if we don't build this, then, we have vulnerabilities, we can't roll out our whole security plan. And you would think that would suffice. However, it doesn't. You've got to perhaps reach out to a physician who's got a position of authority and talk about, some of the things that are important to a physician, life saving and quality of life for patients and ease of use for doctors. So, specific things to that type of role. And then it's not always the person this way, but laterally also, or someone in a totally different area that has the ear of someone because of friendship. So you've got to find out who is related to who and try to enlist them as an ally. And, who knows who. Pretty much from what I had seen is how a lot of things got done in the county. I was up against some things that I wanted to do, and people said, no, we can't do this. No, this isn't done in the county, not this way. And then, a few months later, I'll hear about someone doing just that because they knew someone. And so you would think that government would be even stricter than the private sector with certain standards and things that they do, when in reality, these things are I hope I don't get yelled at. But these things are getting broken all the time. It's relationship based, and that's the important thing. So relationships and the amount of time it will take to get your things accomplished. You just got to stay at it. I have some people who left the county. It was just too frustrating for them.
Definitely. I mean, and I noticed when I first arrived in Fairfax, they had been trying to redo the enterprise infrastructure for like 3 years, and they kept presenting a plan that it was like a one lump sum of money. And it was very frustrating because when I came on board, the first thing I did was I sent an email to all the department heads within the IT agency, the platforms folks, infrastructure, the applications. And I said, you have 30 days to send me your documentation because I need to review it. I need to see what we have. And the backlash I got was, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? And I went to the CIO and I said, look, I can't take responsibility for any of this if I don't see this. And what it brought out to light was there was no documentation. And for a county, this Fairfax County, we're in the top 5 from a, I guess I don't want to say revenue because it's not really a revenue, but a budget perspective and where we're at, the location of where we're at, the prestige of being in the National Capital Region. I was shocked. And it took, I've been here for 20 years. I would say 15 years of a culture change to get people to understand where we were trying to go, what we were trying to do. But I was able to bring in a staff aug contractor to help me write a phased approach to how we have to upgrade our enterprise, because our enterprise consisted of 2 firewalls and IDS, and it was a flat network in the back end. And I was like, there's no way we can deal with this anymore because everyone's getting a computer, everyone's figuring out how to map drives. So, if you were working in health and human services, you could map a drive to the police evidence database. That's a problem. And you had to be able to explain that to the leadership. And for us, our board is very cognizant of technology and how it helps our public, their constituents, the citizens. So we had a policy advisory committee made up of IT industry experts. Each board member on our board was able to elect one of them. They would meet with us. This is who we would present our case to. Then they would go to each board member and fight for us to get the funding we needed. And essentially, my boss in this board looked at this, and it was like over 3 years, $3 million to start. And she looked at the guy that I brought in, and she was like, if I give you $250,000 now, how much of this can you do? And that's how it began, because this guy, and this is the partnership that you build as well with outside entities coming in and helping you. This guy went to the ends of the earth to try and make that begin. And it has grown into, a state-of-the-art enterprise system. We have countries coming in, looking at how we've built what we have, how we do segmentation. And it's just a major culture change.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. So what sort of things have you found have been important, technology-wise to put in place? Because the threat against municipalities, local county governments is just huge these days. What sort of, if you were to say to these county governments, what are those things that should really be focused on?
One of the things I did about 8 years ago, I got rid of Symantec antivirus, and I put in, back then it was called Silence. I'm not trying to sell a vendor, but they used AI machine learning. For me, I was very skeptical because to me, that was like Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain, AI, machine learning. How real is it? But we brought them in. We were able to do a side-by-side comparison, and the difference in what AI and machine learning can do versus what an antivirus solution that had to have a known virus to be able to block it. It was 87% was missed by the antivirus company. The AI and machine learning caught 90-some% of it. And for me, that was a no-brainer. And I still had to go sell that, though, to the platforms people, to the CIO, to the leadership, because the cost was, we had a bundle in our package. We paid what, $3 a license for antivirus. This was going to make that cost go up, and getting them to understand the value of that. And, I knock on wood, Todd, 8 years, I've had zero malware, zero ransomware.
I think that if you look at private and public sectors, you have to still have the same kind of security plan, regardless of where you are.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if, yeah, sure, they're after municipalities, but, you still got to do the same due diligence and protect, the technical, administrative, and physical controls. But there is one slight difference. One of the really good things about government is you don't have that capability of a rogue VP who's just a terror, tormenting people and abusing them and firing them. And I've seen that in the private sector, unfortunately. I saw a little bit of that in the county, but then there's recourse. Then you can appeal and you can shut this person up and get justice. And so people in the county feel more comfortable in their roles. Let's face it, government folks were underpaid, right? We get those pensions down the road, but our counterparts are making much more and getting the big bonuses and everything. But what the county folks get is stability and knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be having to get my resume ready every 2 years. Right.
So how do you recruit to that when you have a different pay scale and the large corporations that can spend the money are having a hard time finding people? What do you do differently to get the right talent?
Well, first off, you look for someone who's got a young child because they want stability, right? And that's the sad reality, well, the good reality. Several people when they're young, they're fine changing jobs, right? They're building up their career path and they're making big. In the private sector, you stay in a job, you'll never get what your worth is. You have to switch jobs. That's just how it is. In the county, or in any government, really, you could possibly maneuver through when there's different openings and apply for that job and get interviewed and get a bump, and you're still within the same overall government structure, right? But just one other thing, Michael, you touched on contractors. The county HR in many governments, you would think that they would be really supportive of the mission, but they seem to sometimes be on their own island. Mm-hmm. And they make it very difficult to hire. For example, in the county, you've got to get in all your paperwork. You have to wait a month to get an interview. Then you're put on a list, which takes another month or two. And then you have to wait and see if there's a particular opening for anyone that would want to use that list. Right. So, we're talking 6 months, and that's ridiculous. If I need somebody, I want to be able to interview and hire, and it's not simple. So
it's definitely not like private industry. Private industry is a lot easier to hire. They have a lot more incentives that they can offer, but it's detrimental, I think, in some ways to the smaller counties that we have in the country because they can't offer the packages that we can. And not that I have packages, but if you're paying attention to anything the county, I noticed our police department now they're offering incentives, bonuses to sign up, or if you're from another jurisdiction and you want to come over, they're offering you a bonus plus putting you in at the same rate you were where you came from instead of having to start over and go move your way up. And here it's very difficult from the IT side. The county here has just started to address the pay scales when it comes to the higher level positions in IT. Now we've got to address the lower levels, which, that's the workforce. Those are the ones, they were here during COVID, the help desk folks, the mobility center, those folks were not here. And, they trying to get the consideration for them to get shots and, they had to become mission essential personnel, doing all of those kinds of things. And then now, we've just hired 2 new analysts in my group, and it was essentially they're looking for somewhere that they can be creative and do things. And we're starting to move down that path. I'm not one of those CISOs who I just have it in black and white. This is how you run the security shop. I want my staff looking at new technology.
So more opportunity. And I know I've mentored some people going into looking at some government roles. And I think there's also a career path in there for people that want to become CISOs, that maybe they have that technical experience, but they want to get on that CISO ladder, and it's a good place to start. if that's their aspiration to move into some other company CISO, to take a small county government and be the person that's directing the security program for them, and learn the skills that way. So how do you work with supply chain and all these issues? The government, I worked with Medicare for 10 years, and it's all government contractors that are actually running all those systems. How do you get the right oversight and assurance that your contractors are actually doing the right thing for your counties?
You've got to go ahead with a third-party risk assessment program. That's essential. And you've got to have, we faced a lot of resistance where people just wanted to self-attest. Say, hey, yeah, we're good, don't worry. And, same thing as in the private sector, right? This question can apply across the board. The challenge, of course, is the resources that you need to do something. So in turn, we look for them to have a third party risk assessment, and they would provide it. We would be involved in helping formulate some of the questions because, of course, they'll want to softball it. We're still waiting for standards. I know in finance, in that vertical, they have their own standard that you get one and it's good across the board for any company. But I haven't seen that in other fields. So that's really important. And, a good GRC tool would be really helpful if you can get the backing to purchase it. But we were pretty involved in trying to do that and looking at different standards that are out there. I know the Cloud Security Alliance has a nice checklist that can be useful, that's free, right? And government, we looked at open source a lot in general because of the cost constraints. We don't have the budget that private sector has. So we built a lot of stuff on our own, and we tried to do things manually where we didn't have a solution out there. So
we're pretty similar in that, Rich, in that we now, since most of the businesses are looking to cloud, people think cloud is going to be the saving grace for budgets and everything else, which a lot of people are finding out it's not. But we do require any solutions coming into the county. They have to go before an architecture review board, and that process is it's not very long. It used to be months long. Now it's down to weeks. But we have a cyber matrix that we send out that each business has to give to the vendor. They must complete it full, answer it, come back. And then a part of our contracts we're putting in now is they have to attest to their risk, and that either provide us their latest risk assessment, their incident response plans, all the things that we're expected to do, we expect them to do as well. The problem is third parties fight back on that, and they try to claim it's proprietary or it's detrimental to their business if they divulge it. And I'm like, well, it's you either divulge it or you don't do business with the county.
Do you ask for right to audit in your contracts?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep. Sure do.
Do you get down to the level of asking what their findings are?
Well, that's what we ask for, and they either provide it. If they don't provide it and they won't provide it, then we won't do business with them. So they do provide it to us now, and we're big enough. My problem, Todd, is what my mission has become is advocating for the smaller counties. They don't have the CISO that can do that stuff. They don't have the stature as a large county like we do. So I am constantly, I chair the National Capital CISOs for local jurisdictions here. We have 22 locals jurisdictions, and we have a committee for public safety that we have. And these folks, even in this region, they still have a hard time getting vendors to comply with the things they're doing. So I love being the hammer when it comes to that. And I have no qualms going to any third-party company and talking to their leadership going, you want to be the ones holding my citizens' data, you're going to have to at least minimally meet what I do. And to me, that's not a problem. But the rest of the country, those smaller counties, they don't have that.
And we do have to help each other. And I know the Cybersecurity Collaborative, which sponsors the podcast, and where we bring CISOs together, also has a relationship with the National
Association of County Governments, because the idea is we have to democratize this stuff and make it available for everybody. So I have one last question for you before we get your closing final thoughts. What is it that you're doing today that's different now that we seem to have a few years ago moved into this, this saying of it's not a matter of if you'll get hacked, it's a matter of when you'll get hacked. So what have you done differently to map to that sort of reality that we're in today?
There's two basic things that everyone really needs to focus on. The first is that segmentation, right? You should have done this all along, but even more so because if someone's going to get in, well, let me rephrase that. When somebody gets in, if they're able to extract anything, minimize what they get, right? Block them from traversing through the whole network and just keep them in one area. The other thing, which is paramount, is your monitoring efforts must be probably to the forefront of your whole plan, because you can do a good job and probably stop most, if not all, of the automated attacks. But if you're targeted, it's awfully difficult to keep somebody out, right? And so you want to know when something's happening. You want a red flag to go up and something's different that you normally don't see happening on your network.
Okay. Michael?
I agree with you, Rich. And for us, Todd, we've, from the CISO, I look at it from the CISO perspective. At our level, my level is not in the operational side of it, but getting the relationships, as Rich, you mentioned earlier, the relationships with your executives, be able to have those conversations with them so you can discuss with them the things that you need, the things that are that are critical to you, making sure that when you are hit, you can recover. For us, it was my one-on-ones with my board, my elected board members. I have the autonomy to do that. I have direct access to the county executive if I need to, when risk is involved. And having those one-on-one conversations, we were able to, in English, explain to my board what immutable backup meant and how, if we're hit, when we're hit, the recovery time is going to be, 10 times faster than it would be if we continue to go down, 2 to 3 data centers and we're trying to do high availability and all the other stuff, and it costs so much more. It is more cost effective to go that route, and recovery would be a lot better. And what we really need to understand in local government, Rich, I think you'll agree with me. You said it earlier, it's political, very political. You have to have your leadership understand, one, they're elected. In order to remain elected, they need to invest in the program because it protects the citizens' data and the reputation of your county. If those two things aren't done, re-election's probably a hard thing to do for them, and they need to understand that. And our mission as CISOs is not to stop business. It's not that at all. We service these citizens. We want to make sure their data that they're entrusting us with is protected, and making sure that the leaders understand that as well.
Well, this has been great, guys. I really appreciate the insights, giving us that perspective on county governments. Let's close this off here. Give me 30 seconds. What piece of advice, Richard, would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs as they're going down this journey?
Remember where you came from. Treat everyone with respect, no matter what. Advocate for your teams. Be agile when you build your teams. I have brought in folks and totally reorged because I saw a strength in somebody new. We didn't need that particular strength as a new hire, but they could do it better than the folks that we had. So we rearranged, which allowed for cross-training, for good backup. And so you need to be thinking out of the box. I brought in a bunch of contractors to help alleviate some of the pressures and strain of trying to hire in government. And they were essential. Plus, it was awesome to have people smarter than me working for me, right? And that's what a contractor could bring. So, I would say keep that in mind. And again, patience, my friends. If you're working in government, you need patience. You can get it done. Don't let those roadblocks stop you. Just keep pushing.
Rich, great.
Michael.
I'll tag on to what you said, Rich, because it is, you have to trust the people you hire and let them do their jobs. You can't micromanage people in this industry and what we do in cyber, because, you know, a lot of the stuff that happens isn't during the 9 to 5 workday. It happens after hours. Let those people be entrusted to manage the SIM, manage the alerts, and you know, just trust that they're going to alert you when things get to a level that you need to be aware of. Document the risks that you have, officially document them, and officially in a classified way present them to your leadership, because we in government have to worry about FOIA. So we got to make sure we do that in a way that, you know, you're not going to be required to release your risks to the public. And there are ways around that with FOIA exemptions. But and then just again, remain open-minded. Make sure that you're agile, as Rich said, and you're willing to look at new technologies. You're willing to go different routes if you need to. And again, you just trust in the people that you hire, because they're the ones that are really, they took the job for a reason, and they really want to do what their mission is. You need to let them do it.
Well said.
Great advice. Great advice. Thanks to both of you. Thanks for sharing your insights and your experience.
You got it. Thank you for inviting us. Been a pleasure.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Visit more CISO Stories podcasts on securityweekly.com, where you will find an index of prior episodes. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. Wiz is on a mission to help every organization rapidly identify and remove critical risks in their cloud environments. Purpose-built for the cloud, Wiz delivers full-stack visibility, accurate risk prioritization, and enhanced business agility. Wiz connects in minutes using an agentless approach that scans both platform configurations and inside every workload. We perform a deep assessment that goes beyond what standalone CSPM and CWPP tools offer to find the toxic combination of flaws that represent real risk. To learn more about Wiz, please visit securityweekly.com/Wiz.